Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another one of our episodes. We are very excited to have Amanda Quick today joining us. Amanda, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us today. And second, I'm very excited for our conversation because we're both trainers. We're both very into raw feeding and all that kind of fun stuff. So thank you for being with us. And tell us a little bit about you, kind of like what you do on a day-to-day professionally.
Thanks for having me, first of all. Honestly, most of my training at this point is over social media platforms. I haven't taken private clients in a while, so I do still consult with previous clients, but most of it is just put out through kind of like a broad spectrum platform versus one-on-ones.
That's awesome.
I myself have a very high needs behavior modification dog, so a lot of my day to day is spent working with her, which she's wonderful. She's come, so far, but having a dog like that with where there's not a lot of latent learning, you spend a lot of time kind of, I guess, relearning stuff over and over to reinforce the habits. But I work completely from home, so I'm super fortunate. I have the one dog, and then I also have a pet pig, so I get to spend a lot of time with my pets during the day.
That is so much fun. Do you also incorporate some of your training stuff with your pig?
Yes. So when I was full time in Austin, I actually had a little pig training company as well. So I did take pig private clients for a while, and it was a dream job.
I love that so much. So where are you located now?
I'm back and forth, so I'm still
Okay.
primarily employed in Austin, but because I'm a child-free millennial, I bought a country home for my reactive dog down in the southeast. So yeah, we're kind of back and forth. So we're
That is
suffering
amazing.
in Alabama. It's not quite as hot as Texas.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, very cool. A pig training. I mean, it sounds like that's something you could probably still kick off in Alabama as well.
Probably
Right.
they're not as many as kept as
No?
like
Okay.
house pets here, so I guess they don't need as much of the like my pig. He's certified for therapy work, so he goes to like brunch and schools and hospitals. So we did a lot of hands-on training with him. But most people, when they purchase a pig or adopt a pig, what they don't realize is that there's a lot of instinctual behaviors to overcome. So there's a lot
Mm.
more challenges of like the natural behavior of pigs that's not compatible with a human lifestyle. So even more
Yeah.
than dogs, you're like really reshaping some of those instinctual behaviors.
That's wild. Yeah, the one of my favorite books, I think it's Jane Donaldson's book, The Culture Clash, and it talks about like dog culture and how it clashes with human culture. She should add a whole nother section about pig culture and how that also
Yes.
clashes with human culture.
Yeah. Well, I think the
That's
mini pigs are so small that people don't really view them as livestock. But I'm like, if you've ever watched a herd of
awesome.
horses communicate with one another, it's really rough. There's lots of biting, kicking. Like they ask for space, pretty rough. And pigs do the same thing. So trying to incorporate a pig into a home with humans, children, dogs, it's a lot of I mean, it's just a lot of shaping of those natural behaviors of more appropriate ways to ask for space or things like that.
How fun.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. I think so. As much as I want to keep talking about pigs, the majority of our listeners and watchers are more in the domestic, non-ag animal sector of that.
Yes.
So, what originally got you into dog training?
I feel so fortunate. So I had a dog who was lovely, and we were already doing some pet therapy work. But we needed a little bit of help. He was about 130 pounds, and so he was just super dog friendly, super people friendly. But I didn't have a lot. I was using like a gentle leader, like the head harness, and we just didn't have a lot of skills for being in public and not having a huge reaction to it. So I just blindly went on Instagram and kind of scrolled through, and the first post I saw where someone had mentioned their dog trainer, I just called them and hired them. I had never heard of the quadrants. I didn't know about the different styles of training, and I got really fortunate. I hired a company called Conscious Dog Training, and once I started working with her with the dogs that I had at that time, I knew I was interested in learning more. But then when those dogs passed and I adopted my new dog who turned out to be a human and dog bite risk, it's kind of like the tale old story, right? Every girl that's a trainer now had that one dog that desperately needed a trainer. So that's how I ended up. I started shadowing the company, and Jennifer Burns was the trainer, and I started shadowing her with her other clients. And the next thing I knew, like most of the reactivity and stuff, I could handle super easily. So I thought, why not go ahead and get certified and help people, because in Austin, you're just stacked on top of each other. You're bringing these dogs into like these really chaotic settings. You've got robots and hoverboards and hike and bike trails and other dogs. Like you're seeing another dog every 15 feet. And so it was a huge need, and still is, in the community for those dogs to have some skills to exist in such a chaotic environment.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of similar to me. I kind of just fell into it, grew from it, learned from it. I had a really awesome mentor. I got my mentorship out in Houston. And then when I came back home to San Antonio is when I started my own business. But just kind of like learning as you're doing it kind of seems to be the best option, because it's one thing to learn from textbooks and books, and I think that's really important to learn concepts, but when you actually get your hands on them dogs and start hanging out with them and learning, because every dog's different, you can't just focus on one specific concept.
Yeah.
For you, when did like nutrition start playing a role in what you do professionally?
Gosh, so I've kind of been in an animal adjacent or animal field for pretty much my entire adult life. I was either a vet tech or receptionist for, I think like 17 years. So
Okay.
before Austin, I lived in Atlanta, and I had kind of started researching more holistic or integrated paths forward for pet medicine, because like the research at the time was showing that maybe, we were spaying and neutering these dogs too young before they were mature, and then maybe we were over vaccinating, and we were seeing a lot of fallout health behaviors from that, like increased cancer risk and things. And so I started researching that, and I ended up working at a clinic that had a couple of pet chiropractors and holistic veterinarians on staff.
That's
And
awesome.
so because I had gotten so passionate about like how can we do as much preventative stuff as possible for these dogs, I ended up being put in charge of the nutrition. So this was forever ago. I mean, this was probably 2010. And so it was a really awesome opportunity. I researched kind of all of the foods that were on the market at that time, all the different price points, the different, methods of preparing it. I got to actually meet with the companies. I got to see some of the places where like the animals were kept, like the sheep or, all of the proteins and stuff. And so it was a huge, huge opportunity. But I think that's probably when my interest in nutrition really peaked.
Okay, cool. When did you start? Did you have, like, when you were still taking clients and working with them, was that something that you kind of incorporated with your training, like lesson plans and things like that, or did the nutrition stuff kind of come a little bit later?
I think it always went hand in hand. A lot of the clients that I have usually if they're working with me, they're kind of like-minded as far as being on the, like the hippier side of things.
Yeah.
And so usually if they're working with me, nutrition comes up quickly, because even just deciding like the treat value, right? I'm like, when you're feeding raw, you can't really get your dog to do a high value behavior with kibble, because they're used to something so much better. So I think the first things I like to find out, so even my intake sheet before I take a training client, is any pre-existing veterinary conditions, of course their most recent blood work or diagnoses, and then what are they feeding?
I
Because
love that.
inflammation is a real contributor to behavior problems and pain. So without ruling out a really inflammatory diet, it's hard to know what your root cause is of some of the behaviors.
Absolutely. I think so many people don't see the link between those two things. I think it's more something that clients are understanding a little bit, at least from my perspective. It's something that they're understanding a little bit more. I don't know if I think I mentioned, I'm in San Antonio, so we're not as like health conscious as Austin. We're not too far behind, but we're not as hippie as Austin. So for me, having that
Places
conversation,
are.
right. So for me, when I first started having that conversation, I would get like, what do you mean what I feed my dog affects their behavior? But now I get, oh, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. So like the like feedback, the initial feedback that I get from a client now is much different, which is really fun. What were maybe some like, not quick changes, because I think training is never fast, right? But what were some of those like noticeable changes when you did have to implement a nutrition change? Say, for example, you have a training client, they're kind of more on the more processed heavily cited diet, and that was an opportunity for you to get them maybe not all the way raw, but just a little bit more, gently cooked or more on the fresh side. What were some of the things that you noticed as far as them physically and behaviorally that kind of changed for the positive?
Yeah, I think I've been really lucky. Most of my clients, because it's usually pretty behavior intensive, and so it's not usually a small behavior that needs changing. So I kind of partnered with Dr. Adam Lassen at Roots Integrative in Austin, and so a lot of my clients would actually let me attend their vet appointments with them. So when we're
Oh,
first
how
starting
cool.
to knock out, yeah, it was so nice. So we're first starting to knock it out. Then I also have a vet in my corner who's saying, like, look, you've probably got some inflammation and pain from the gums, and feeding raw will help balance that mouth pH and prevent this bacteria and plaque from rebuilding. Or, if we're having itchy skin and the dog is constantly itchy and he's miserable, like a lot of that irritability can be fixed if we fix the diet. So it was helpful for me to bring it up right from the beginning, because I had a vet in my corner saying this could be, contributed by leaky gut, by joint inflammation, by underlying systemic inflammation that could be resolved if we start with diet. Or even, I worked with one veterinary behaviorist in Sugar Land, Texas, and one of the first things she mentioned, which I was super excited about, was tryptophan. She was like, have you tried your dog on a turkey diet? Because high tryptophan could help with some of this, the emotional outbursts and stuff that you're seeing with the dog. So I thought that was really, really nice too. I think it's easy to find vets to get on board, I think, in a city like Austin. And then even if your clients aren't necessarily seeing the link between the training and the diet yet, they can see the link between the health and the diet, and then the health and the training.
Absolutely. I'm glad you added that caveat of it's easy in Austin because it has
Yeah.
been so hard in San Antonio for me
Oh,
to
it's
find a good
impossible
vet with
here.
that.
Yeah, we still
Yeah,
consult. The veterinarian that I found here, they're lovely and they're so great. My dog has to go in, muzzled. She's got a bite history. They're
okay.
so lovely with her, but we still
Oh.
consult with our holistic vet in Austin on pretty much everything.
Yeah, I drive to Austin to Roots to
Oh,
take
yeah.
my walks. So
Yes.
luckily it's not far, and it's a nice little drive. It's a cute little
It's not
I
bad.
have I
Yeah.
have a yeah, I have a boy schnauzer, so it's a that goes there. So it's a nice little like son and mother date. Let's go to the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
vet.
That's what I was just talking about this with one of my trainer friends yesterday. I'm like, if you ever see me driving far, like if I'm in Austin and you catch me in Georgetown, it's because I'm looking for a quiet place to walk my reactive dog. No other reason. I'm not going up there to date. I'm not going up there to hang out with friends. It's for the dog, or I'm not going up there.
Right, the things that we do for our dogs. It's so
Yes.
funny. I think I kind of know the answer to this question, but I want to kind of like narrow it down because you kind of mentioned that you have some vets, like that one vet who said like tryptophan, turkey. So tryptophan is one of the precursors of serotonin, right? So we can boost serotonin more naturally. So what's one nutrition conversation that you wish more trainers, veterinarians, and pet parents were having together? Like maybe there's one thing that you're like, oh, I love probiotics and how much that's making a difference in the gut. Like, is there a specific something that like you have become more passionate about as far as training and nutrition goes hand in hand?
Honestly, one of the key players for me is the keto diet. And I don't know if you know my story of how I came to know about Bones and Co. But I actually had just my favorite soulmate of a dog diagnosed with an inoperable cancer in 2020, and I was told that he would live like 1 to 3 months. It was very sudden. He was young and healthy and happy. And so, of course, the first thing we do is we go to Roots. And at that point, I was feeding a mix. Like I was doing some of the lightly cooked food, some of the high-end kibbles. And when we went to Roots, the first thing that Dr. Lassen said, he's like, we've got to get him off of anything except raw and ketogenic. And so we did. It was the first change we made before we got the meds and everything in order even. And he lived 8 months. So I was supposed to have, 1 to 3 months with this dog, and I got 8. And they were like 8 very healthy, happy months of like running, hiking. We went to Colorado and like we did the mountains, and he swam. And so I think one of the things I'm most passionate about is just the prevention side of it. And so I think when you've got someone who has hired a trainer, they love this dog. They want things to work out with this dog. They don't want to rehome. They don't want to live, completely separated or miserable. So like you've got somebody who really wants to make the most of this relationship and have it last as long as possible. So I think having that backstory, the one thing that I tell clients is I wish that I hadn't waited until my dog had cancer to make the swap. Not to say that, maybe I would still have the dog now. But I mean, if I could have spared him that and bought myself a few more years with him, I absolutely would have. So one of my things usually is just like, you don't have to wait for your dog to be unwell to put them on the diet. Like, this is a preventative diet that can buy you more happy years together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think people get kind of nervous or scared of like the cost of it because yeah, sure, maybe it sometimes cost more to feed raw or gently cooked versus kibbled. 'Cause, man, sometimes I look at the price of some of those kibbles and I'm like,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
they're expensive and also
Mhm.
not good for your dog. So sometimes it's important to kind of do those price analysis. But even if it is more expensive in the long term, right? We're sparing health and
Oh,
wellness
yes.
and vet bills, possibly even trainer bills a little
Or
bit.
the cost of dentals alone. I mean, like the
Mm,
dog I have now is, gosh, she'll be 7 this year, I think. We've never needed a dental. Her teeth are pristine. So, like,
wow.
even just the cost of like not having to do a dental every 2 or 3 years on your dog because of the plaque buildup from a kibble is, it's back what I've spent on raw over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
And I feel like the raw is so nutritionally dense and available to the dog's body that I actually feed a lot less. People are always
Mhm.
surprised because she's a large dog, and people are always surprised at how little of the bones and co I actually have to feed. But I mean, her weight is managed really well on not a ton of food. So I don't know that. I mean, I would say like considering the medical aspect of it, we're probably saving money feeding raw than if I were feeding a kibble and doing the dentals, at her
Yeah.
annual every year or
Yeah.
2 years.
I love that aspect of it too, right? We're feeding usually less than kibble, right? Because
Oh
it's
yeah.
I love that. What do pet parents often overlook when they're focused on training? Do you find that like nutrition is kind of something that I mean, I guess you kind of already kind of mentioned like your clients are pretty like-minded, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there something else that you find like there's like a light bulb moment for them that they're like, oh, I hadn't even considered that because I was so focused on the training aspect of it.
Hmm. I think I think that probably the biggest thing is kind of what we've already touched on. It's like they can't necessarily make that link between the diet and the behavior, but they can between the health. So I think like if I just try to make it relatable to them. So I just tell if you've got this dog and he's itchy all the time, like how well imagine it as yourself or your child, how well are you going to learn? I could take you and give you a test on fractions or something you learned in like third grade, but if you're so itchy and miserable and irritated, you won't score well on something that you have the skills to do. So that's
Mhm.
kind of where I come in with the dogs. I'm like, we're getting the cart before the horse, and we start asking these dogs to perform as if they're in a baseline state of mind, but they're not. They're
Yeah.
chronically painful or overweight, and so like we're not giving the dogs a fair chance for the training to kick in. So I think kind of relating it back to the human side of it and like how well would you function under those circumstances helps people
Mhm.
get a better idea of like why the diet and the behaviors from a poor diet could actually be sabotaging their training goals.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What do you personally choose for your, like, when you're looking for food for your dogs? What are like some really important things to you when you're looking at maybe a new brand, or maybe you're sticking to the same brand but looking at a different protein? Like, are you very like protein forward? Are you looking for specific ingredients or nutrients in there? Are you looking for maybe some concepts from the brand, like, I don't know, family owned or something like that? What do you choose to look for?
I'm usually looking for raw. I like a red meat protein. I'm usually looking for beef or venison, and that's just from kind of some of the research I've done from for my own self and kind of what's the most bioavailable and protein dense. But the biggest thing for me since the cancer journey with my previous dog is I want it to be that 1-to-1 protein to fat ratio. So
Mhm.
for me, even like a really nice raw brand that is humanely and responsibly sourced and all clean ingredients, if I don't have that 1-to-1 ratio that's going to keep the dog in ketosis, I'm not going to feed it.
Awesome. I love that. What's something you wish that you'd known about nutrition earlier, whether it was you professionally or personally?
Probably the same thing. I wish that I hadn't waited until a dog was unwell to realize how
Mhm.
important feeding raw and ketogenic was. So I think that I have had the opportunity with the dog I have now. I've had her, I think, since she was like 12 weeks old. And so she's been on raw her whole life. So, I kind of feel like, how sometimes you look back and even though we've done everything for these dogs, you look back and you're like, gosh, I was 20 and I was broke and like, I wish I could have done more for them. And so I feel like this dog is kind of the first one in my life where I'm really like, I know enough. I have the skills and the knowledge and I'm able to afford to like give her really what all of the dogs deserve. And so that's the biggest thing I wish I'd learned sooner was just the importance of raw and keto and how
Yeah.
preventative it can be. Yeah, we weren't really thinking of pet food as a preventative medicine. We were thinking of it as just sustaining the pet and not really as preventative of future disease.
I love what you mentioned there. Like we all, my older guy, Sully, he's 16. He was the one that I could take to Roots. I got him when I was, I think, 19 years old in college. I was a sophomore going into my junior year. No, I think it was a sophomore. And, kind of I wish I would have known better, but I think our experiences with them is their legacy that we get to pass on to our future dogs, right? And then now we get to have those learning opportunities and the knowledge to start them off younger now and to have that long life of feeding the right, better food for them. So I know a lot of people kind of tend to beat themselves up over, I wish that I would have known more and better sooner. But we all got to start somewhere. So for anyone listening to this, if you're still like, I'm just starting my journey and my dog is 8 years old, it's not too late. Like you can totally still make some really good changes there.
My first dog that I put on raw and keto was 8 years old and terminally ill. So I mean, it's like you can start at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of segues nicely into our next question. If pet parents want to make one positive change today, where should they start? What's
This
your
comes
usual
up,
go-to?
yeah, see, this actually comes up for me a lot, especially for people who are cost hesitant. So one of the things that I tell them is like getting some raw in the diet is better than none. So even if you just cut out a quarter cup of the kibble and you throw on some raw, anything you can do that's going to aid with their dental health. It's going to aid with them actually getting the nutrition that their body needs. So, that's the first thing I tell people. Buy a pack of it, and instead of feeding the recommended amount on the box, replace a quarter of what you're currently feeding with raw. Just get those nutrition or the nutrients in somehow. And you
Yeah.
will see a change. I mean, one of the biggest things, working in the vet field as long as I did, you will see a change in dental health. And usually, like itchy, irritated skin or GI upset, you will see those quickly, even just supplementing with raw.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So many of my clients, and kind of like what you were saying before, they'll notice the physical changes first because, I mean, obviously, especially if we're dealing like with behavior modification, if a behavior has been practiced multiple times, it's now kind of maybe not a habit, but like this is just kind of how we roll. Now we have to undo a little bit of stuff first. But the body, I mean, sure, sometimes we have like a die-off system happening, but they usually tend to see those changes very quickly physically and then start to see like the behavioral differences. What is one, if you can think of maybe like your favorite, but like a good like success story that you've had with somebody? Like what were they working on? What kind of dog was it? And then like what kind of changes were you guys able to make when you implemented both the training and the nutrition?
Yeah, I know I keep going back to skin, but again, Austin has such horrible allergies and all of the dogs are itchy. So the kind of like the leaky gut system comes up usually pretty quickly. And so one of a small change that people can make for dogs like that is adding in the goat's milk, like add in this like these live probiotics and prebiotics, and you see the dog like especially a dog that comes to mind is it was a golden retriever puppy who was probably 8 months old, and so his focus was already that of a goldfish. And so then you add in like the itchiness on top of it, and he wanted to train so badly and he could not because he sits down to scratch and then he topples over face first, and next you know he's digging and you've lost everything for his training that day.
Baby.
So I think with him we added in the goat's milk. We saw some of that itching resolve, and then we also saw a dog who had an increased interest in food, right? Because he wasn't particularly motivated by having his kibble again, but once he realized that there were things better than kibble that you could get, he was more food motivated and much better focused without all of the itching issues.
So cool. Yeah, I guess the food motivation is definitely a huge one, right? My dogs love to work, and they're such food hounds that they would literally work for anything, right?
Same.
But that's always a fun question that I have for my clients is like, is your dog food or treat motivated? And sometimes they'll tell me no, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to take that for value. Like,
Yeah.
is it in specific situations? What kind of food are you feeding? Are you trying to do something like a super low value kibble in a very high like stimulating environment like a
Yeah.
farmer's market? Like we got to look at like how everything's going. But I love going more for those freeze dry, like any of the bones and co treats and stuff like that,
Yeah.
even like the chicken hearts, like cutting those up really nice and tiny, and giving those always is a huge like game changer when it comes to the types of treats and things like that when training. That's
Yeah, and I
awesome.
think when you can get something like that that's a single ingredient protein, it gives you a lot of leeway in training multiple clients because you're not dealing with a lot of allergens. As long as you've got a couple of different protein options with you, you can usually work with multiple dogs. They're all going to be really palatable, so the dogs are interested in the treat. So you can get high value without spending a ton of money because you're getting just this single protein treat, but the dogs love it. So, yeah, I think I'm with you. Like, is the dog food motivated? If he hasn't starved to death, he probably is. We just need to see like what is the value of the treat. And this is how I explain it. Especially like my households where there are children, and I just say, like I could probably pay you $1 to get me a glass of water, and you would. But if I wanted to pay you $1 to pick up all the sticks in my whole yard, it's not really worth it anymore. So like, you have to kind of
Ooh.
think of that with your dog. I'm like, when you're asking him to sit in the living room where he is all day and there's no distractions, he might do that for just a run of the mill cookie. But I'm like, if we're now wanting to take him to a dog park or something and have him stay checked in with you and not playing with others, it's not really worth it anymore for that little bite of kibble.
Oh my God, I love those analogies for sure. Yeah, for us in my household, we're always typically grabbing for Bones and Co. treats. For Zelly, I tend to do the minnows a little bit
Oh
more.
yeah, those are a big
Um,
hit here too.
and
Even
this
the
is so
pig
easy.
likes the minnows.
I love that.
I know.
They're so easy. I'm a greedy trainer. Sometimes I'll cut things up into tiny pieces so I can get like three treats out of one minnow, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But the freeze dried, like the toppers, those are a huge get. You get this big old bag, and I mean, again, greedy trainer. Sometimes I'll cut every single one of those little pieces into two,
Same. It's
and
the
those are super easy.
perks of having a food hound, right? When your dog is like so excited for food, they don't care if you've cut it into little tiny pieces. They're just happy to have it.
It's a jackpot every single
Yeah.
time. Yes. And like having those single ingredient foods is super helpful to when I'm training both my dogs at the same
Yeah.
time. So Sully, like I said, he's 16. We're dealing with some like hind end weakness. So we're doing a lot of like muscle conditioning and things like that. Rishi, my younger dog, she loves to train. So anytime there's food around, she's like, oh my God, what are we doing? So I'm
Yeah.
doing reps with Sully and doing like his little exercises. And at the same time, I'm tossing out a piece of food for Rishi to then go do like a search and find. So just doing like two things at one time, but having high quality food that they both really love that I can feel good about giving you plenty of,
Yeah.
as we do high reps is a huge game changer for us in my house personally. Yeah.
Well, I think it's nice too that you've got something because there's not a lot of filler ingredients and no carbs and things. It's like if you need to do the PT with your older pet for half an hour, you can keep tossing cookies away to your other dog without worrying about her calorie intake necessarily. Like you're not really giving anything that's going to have any kind of negative effects. It's like you said, it's a treat that you can feel good about. But I mean, also, I guess like you can give it over the course of a long time because I think when you're working with a positive reinforcement trainer, a lot of the clients, the first thing they say is like, well, won't the dog get fat? And I'm like, two things. Like we're going to cut back at meal times a tiny bit, but also we're not going to be feeding anything. And it's like, that's like worrying that your kid's going to get fat if you're giving too many grapes. Like we're not working with,
Yeah.
candy here. So
Yeah.
it's nice that you can train for extended periods of time when you have a dog that has the mindset for it.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else about nutrition and behavior that we haven't talked about that you're like, oh, I think this is just so important?
I mean, this is going to be every positive reinforcement, based trainer that you know. My biggest thing is just that no dog is going to need a heavier hand. So for me, I'm primarily working with dogs that have a bite history, either human or dog or other pet or all of the above. And so I think my biggest thing is I'm able to follow the Lima protocol. I'm not ever having to get into any kind of positive punishment stuff. I'm just working with the high value treats, usually those single protein treats, and positive reinforcement training. And we're taking dogs. I have one of my like best friends actually has a Doberman that I got out of Houston. He was set to be euthanized because he had bitten repeatedly people. And when we got him to Austin, it was a resource guarding case, and we did positive reinforcement to work on the resource guarding. And this dog is lovely now. Like there's no issues within the home. He's also fully fed Bones and Co. But we've got no bite issues at all, no resource guarding issues at all. And that's having children in the home, other pets in the home. So the biggest thing to me that's like so important is if you're doing it right, if you've got these high value treats and you are really making an effort to understand the dog's emotional state and what is driving the behavior, every dog can be trained no matter the behavior using this skill set.
I think that is a perfect place for you to just mic drop right there because I mean, we're looking at everything holistically, right? I'm so happy that you pointed out like you don't need a heavy hand. We don't need to use positive punishment. I still catch so many like, maybe it's just more prominent here in San Antonio, but there's still so many balanced trainers.
Austin too.
Okay, yeah, and it's just, it makes me so sad when someone catches a really big platform on social media and then just fuels this fire of dominance theory, and that's when I'm like, this is like, yo, we got to do better. We got to do better for dogs. We got to feed them right. We got to treat them right. We got to look at their nervous system and their emotional state. If your dog is biting, they're not just a bad, aggressive dog. It's coming from someplace. So being able to get down to the root of the cause is super important. I love that. Amanda, where can we learn more about you? Where can we follow you? Tell us the things.
Yeah, so I mean, all social platforms, it's just going to be a quick fix. And like you said, not because training is quick, but just because my initials are A, my last name is Quick, and I wanted something
that works so well.
Yeah, I was like, I just wanted something that was easy to find. So it's a quick fix. Most active on Instagram and TikTok, but you can find us on Facebook and YouTube as well.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. This was a lovely conversation. Anytime that we can chat about behavior and training and nutrition and all the fun stuff, like it just makes my little heart happy. So I appreciate your time spending with me today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure you're like me. I mean, this is one thing I can talk about all day, every day. So like if someone will let me whip out my science training soapbox, I'm going to get on it.
We'll be on it forever long allow us to.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, I think that is a wrap.